Hello, welcome to the Left Shoe Politics Podcast. I am your host, Rick Shew, and don't have my guys with me, my partners, Jeremy Grokely and Michael Malloy. They are doing their own thing this week. I'm not even sure what it is, but I know this is a fan of both of theirs. I'm excited to hear it. They're doing some sort of podcast, and so that'll be great for all of us to hear. If you're listening to us for the first time, I don't know what outlet you're on. Maybe you're on YouTube. I don't know. Just know that we are on Stitcher, iTunes, Google Play, Libsyn, etc. We're all over the place, anywhere where you can find a good podcast. So let me give a little bit of background about what today's show's about, because it's just myself and a good doctor that I will introduce momentarily. Now, listen, before I get into this, I'm going to make no apologies about my opinions of President Donald Trump. If you know anything about me, the blogs, whatever, you know that I am no fan of this individual. There are things I can say a great deal about President George Bush, President Reagan, many Republican presidents that I did not like their policies. But at the end of the day, I still found them to be good people, and I could point to things that were redeemable. There's nothing about this man that I find redeemable. I think he's a detestable human being, and I think he has a reprehensible administration. Now, I'm trying, right? I'm trying to not feel so cynical and negative, because the man is my president, and we have him for at least 4 years. And let me tell you something, my fellow liberals, I think we're stuck with this guy for a while. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to reach out to Trump supporters. And I could easily find some redneck moron in backwoods wherever that could just tell me, yeah, like Trump, he don't like them Mexicans and he's banning the Muslims. And, that's fine and well. But I wanted to talk to somebody who I think represents the majority of Trump supporters, by the way. That is an intelligent, thoughtful person, and someone smarter than I am. And that's not hard to find by any stretch of the imagination. So I put out on social media, on my own personal Facebook page, and I just said, listen, I'm looking for a person to come on to our show and have a conversation with me about Donald Trump, that they supported the man, and I want to talk to them. And a friend of mine from New York, and as you guys probably know, I'm in Dallas, Texas, reached out to me and said, hey, I have a buddy that's a doctor that agreed to do it. My first thoughts were, doctor, great. Educated, accomplished person, I want that. I could just easily bring on someone that's an idiot and just drive home my narrative that Trump supporters are dumb and everybody wins. That's not true, and I didn't want that. So that was the first thing that got my attention. He's a doctor. That's great. Secondly, that he had the balls to do this, right? Because we have to give anybody credit that will come on to a show like this, opposing views, and have the guts to sit down and have a conversation about it. And then thirdly, I got on the phone with the guy, and he's a complete gentleman. So without further ado, I want to introduce him. And just know, guys, that we're just trying to have a conversation, and I want to listen to someone, all right? It's about listening, because we have to find some common ground somewhere. So my guest today, without further ado, Dr. Douglas Friedrich. The gentleman is an eye surgeon who was born and raised in New York City, my personal favorite city. A city, by the way, that voted 80% for Hillary Clinton. 80%, okay? So let's put that in perspective for a moment. It's funny. He's in New York. I'm in Texas, and I'm the liberal. He's no stranger to the good old Southern life, though. Dr. Friedrich worked in rural North and South Carolina for many years as a commercial pilot prior to entering medical school. Again, he's no dummy. He's also the father of 3 sons, ages 2 to 11. And he sent me a nice little message. He said, it's very narcissistic talking about myself so much. I don't like it. It makes me nauseous, which also goes to the character of the man. So, Dr. Friedrich, how are you, sir?
I am fine, Rick. It's a pleasure to be here, finally.
And by the way, the finally part, he's also been very patient. We were going to do this weeks ago, but I've been out of commission. I had major back surgery. I had 3 discs removed and a lower lumbar spinal fusion. And so I've been out of commission, and he's been very patient. We were going to do it one night, but I was like a couple of days going into surgery. I was hopped up on pain meds, and I was depressed. And I said, look, do you mind if we postpone this? And he said, sure. And my first fear, doctor, was that your first thoughts are probably going to be like, oh, this guy put that bullshit up on Facebook and then, didn't really mean it. And then someone actually bit, and he's like weaseling out. So thanks for hanging with me, man.
No sweat, bro. No sweat.
All right. So we've talked on the phone a few times. We're not total strangers at this point. but I wanted us to keep each other at an arm's length so we could have a real spontaneous conversation here about the current affairs and the guy that's now residing in the White House that we have diametrically different views on. But, what I wanted to do, Doctor, to start this off, and let me just address you directly. Thank you for doing this. Okay, I mean that. It's a big deal. I appreciate it. But just so everybody can get an understanding of who you are, tell us your political background. For instance, have you always been a Republican? Give us a kind of a general view of yourself over the last 20, 30, 40 years, whatever.
Well, the first election I voted for was for Ronald Reagan. That was actually when I turned 21. The thing is, being in New York City, you need to be a registered Democrat, whether you have Republican views or not, because 80% of the city swings Democrat. So the primaries in New York are very key. And in New York City especially, you cannot vote in a Democratic primary, if you're a registered Republican. So most of the city, including Donald Trump, for this particular reason, was a registered Democrat, probably for most of their lives. So we can actually have some say in the primary. I would say I swing politically more socially liberal. I don't think anybody, even you, can be 100% liberal off the charts.
Of course not.
Left wing. And nobody can be completely right wing. The only times you see that are the pundits on CNN and Fox News. Most people are kind of in the middle of the road, as I am. I would say I'm socially liberal, a lot of gay friends. I believe in gay rights completely. But I swing more fiscally conservative. I voted for Barack Obama in 2008. I really thought he was a person of change. I did not vote for him in 2012. And then as soon as Donald Trump walked down on June 15th, I knew immediately he was the guy. Not so much for me, but for what he spoke to in America. He spoke to the forgotten person in America, whereas the Democratic Party seems to be so hung up on things that really do not pertain to the average American, like transgender bathrooms and all this political correctness. People in middle America were like, I don't believe that. And all these Hollywood coast-to-coast liberals, as a poll showed last week, most Americans feel the media in Hollywood is out of touch with mainstream America. I don't know much about your show, which is actually good because this is like almost like a virgin conversation.
Sure.
But I've had a lot of conversations, a lot on social media. I mean, almost all my social media is filled with Democrats and liberals. And I really get under their skin because I don't think I've ever called anybody a name. I don't think I've cursed once in 2 years on social media. And people respect me because I'm a good person. I have a very good heart. And that really gets under the skin of a lot of liberals, that I keep it without going there. I've been called names. I've been cursed at. I've had to block people because I feared for my life, some people on these social conversations. But that's where I stand. I'm kind of in the middle of the ground, and I'm happy to be on your show to explain the Trump phenomenon. I don't think you see it. And I think I know why you don't see it. We can get into that later.
Well, no, and you've covered a lot of ground, and you had a lot of loaded things, and the last thing in the world I wanted to do was to interrupt you as my first-time guest especially, but with all due respect, you went from people voted for Trump basically because it was the forgotten person and their jobs were lost, to transgender bathrooms. And here's my issue with that. The only people that made an issue with transgender bathrooms are the religious right. It's not even an issue. It was just something that made common sense. If you have a big heart, if you care for people, these are children that have a gender identity. And all we're saying is let's not make these kids' lives any more miserable than it is. And then suddenly, the religious right came out, and it turned into this big thing when the boogeyman, and you're going to let men in bathroom with their little girls. And by the way, I have 2 daughters. When you take your daughters into a bathroom as a man, you're taking them into the frickin' men's room. Okay, that's first.
Oh, my God. Yeah, that's
okay,
true.
that's the first thing, right? So this whole thing about you want your girls peeing around grown men, I'm like, my girls pee around grown men because I take them into men's restrooms. What is more disruptive than anything is a person who identifies as the opposite sex that looks like the opposite sex of a man that thinks he's a woman and dresses like a woman, walks into the men's room at the mall. That is more disruptive than anything. But I don't really want to get off on this tangent about transgender restrooms or rights. I just find it funny because you had me for a second, because you are right in one regard, Doctor, is that Trump was elected by virtue of talking to people that felt left out. Now, you lost me when you went off on the social thing, particularly when you started with the fact that you're socially liberal. That was a little bit of a contradiction, but that's okay. I'm not going to hold you to just sound bites. But I think
I just want to clarify one thing.
Please, go ahead. Please do.
The transgender issue to us Republicans was not a religious right thing. It was a...
Yes, it was.
It was a...
Yes, it was. Maybe it wasn't to you, but it was. Okay, but go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
To most of us, that the federal government... That's how most of the Republicans feel about most issues.
You really think the majority of the people... Now, I believe you, sir, when you say that you did. I genuinely do. But you, honest to God, you're an educated man. You think the average person that was opposed to that was to that because of states' right? Or maybe the fact they were just grossed out by the fact that there are people that like to think that they're the opposite sex. So you're not really going to sit here and tell me you think it was...
100%.
Come on.
100%. Do you like to... I see how you like to paint us as, the radical right, the religious crew.
I just said that you are not that person. I believe you when you say it's about states' rights, sir. I do. The majority of those people, that's not why they were doing it.
Well, I disagree. But that's okay. We can move on.
That's all right. There's going to be lots of things we disagree about. But listen, I think that I can already tell something right now. You're one of the good guys. You voted for a bad guy, all right? But you're one of the good guys who I think has, with all due respect, some misguided views. And you're a good person, and you're going to want to lump the people that voted the way you did in your category. And I bet that's going to be hard to be you. Because unfortunately, sir, you are the minority of the people that vote like you do. You're one of the good guys.
How can you make a statement like that? I'm just curious.
I can make a statement like that because a lot of people voted for this guy, even though he did a lot of sexist, bigoted, racist things.
Wait, let me just wait.
I think that you
go on. Can I just before we just continue the conversation, just so I can get, because I've had a lot of these social interactions with liberals that viscerally hate Donald Trump so much that it actually clouds their judgment. And I've been involved with a lot of discussions with, very smart people, but their visceral hatred was so deep that they almost lost their ability to reason. I'm going to ask you just a point-blank question. Do you think you're capable of carrying on this discourse with me without conversation-ending statements like name-calling, calling him or me racist? Because those are usually you really can't continue a conversation. If we're having a conversation and I say, you're a racist xenophobe, conversation kind of ends there because I've stamped you with the name. Are you capable of carrying out any this political discourse without going to name-calling and things of that sort?
Absolutely. And I started with it by saying, I don't think that you are those things, which is why we're talking.
No, I don't take it personally. I'm just saying the general
but at the same time, and Doctor, I love where you're coming from on that, because the name calling and the hyperbole, it drives me crazy. It drove me crazy during the Bush years, and during the Obama years, and quite frankly, it drove me crazy during the Bush years. I was a very loud vocal opponent of the Iraq War and a lot of things about Bush. But man, some of the things coming from the left were just ridiculous, and I would stand up for that. I was like, look, I don't think that Dick Cheney or I don't think Donald Rumsfeld are good people. I have a lot of issues with the Iraq War. I think there was a lot of lies that led us into that war. But Bush is a good person. He's a bad president. He's a good person. And that was always my sort of foundation for conversations. And quite frankly, I have a lot of admiration for his father. I always thought he was an underrated president. Going to the Obama years, it was the same thing, right? You can look back on Reagan. I've got gay friends that think Reagan just hated gays and wanted them dead because he didn't want to believe that HIV and AIDS was real. I'm like, come on. I defend that stuff. Like, I don't think that's true. I think Reagan's a good guy. I think that a lot of what was going on at the time is that people just didn't know the extent of it, and they just were blindsided. I don't think in my heart of heart that Ronald Reagan was twitching his mustache and saying that he hopes fags die. That's not how I look at things. However, with this president, when you've got a president who calls Mexicans rapists, who says we need to ban Muslims for entering the country, when you have a president saying things, this isn't like speculation. This is saying things, right? It is, I can't ignore what he said, and I won't spin it. Now, but let's move on, because like I established from the very beginning, I know that you're one of the good people, and I appreciate you being on the show. And so you voted. When you say an untrue statement about Donald Trump, I just need to clarify it, because the rapist talking points that you just spouted out was taken out of context. No, it wasn't.
How do you think he meant it? Tell me what your thoughts on that.
This is what he said. Mexico, when they're sending people, they're sending rapists, and I assume some are good people. And people will say, well, he's talking about illegal immigrants. I'm like, first of all, God didn't create Americans. We are a one people under God. So Mexicans that live in Mexico aren't subhuman people. And to say that they're just rapists it's still a racist comment. I don't care.
You really think that? Wow. That's
what he said. I don't think.
But that's not what he meant. That's not. But you take what he said.
I don't have the luxury of knowing him personally and getting inside his head. What I do know is the things that he said, and he said Mexicans are rapists. He also said POWs aren't war heroes. He also mocked a Gold Star mother because she's a Muslim. He also said that Islam hates this.
One thing at a time. He was talking about the coyotes that transport Mexicans across the border. It is well established that those people that are being transported are in a very bad place in their lives where they're so dependent on their coyotes, and there have been reports and documented evidence that some of the women being transported across the border are raped on their cross across the border.
That's unfortunate. That's not what he said.
That is what he clarified in subsequent statements.
He didn't clarify. He generalized. This is the magic of this guy.
Jumped on this statement, and you bought it hook, line, and sinker.
No.
I mean that. He did not mean that.
I didn't buy anything. It's what he said. This is the problem. He can say whatever. He can tweet whatever. And the moment he does, everybody that supports him starts working backwards to try to spin it and justify it.
Not true.
I'm not in the business of doing that.
That's absolutely not true. You take things out of context. If somebody says, take Donald Trump seriously, not literally. That was a famous...
ridiculous. That's a ridiculous cop-out. He tweets that 3 million illegals voted. So what does everybody do? They work backwards. They start finding anecdotal things and say, well, 31 people illegally voted in South Carolina. See, he's on to something. That's what he's doing. He makes an outrageous...
A lot of things Donald Trump has said has actually turned out correct. And I don't believe 3 million people voted illegally, but there is no proof that they did not. There's no proof that they did. I don't believe that they did, but I do know there is a big problem in California where you don't need to show any identification to register to vote. That's a big problem. And by saying these bombastic statements, he brings attention to the issue. May I suggest you don't take him so literally. Wait. He's not like any other politician we've ever had in this country. He was a non-politician. He was a successful businessman, and he speaks his mind. He's a loud, obnoxious New Yorker that can be a prick at some time. Okay? That's it. You got to accept.
Doctor, he's the president of the United States. The president of the United States comes out and says, as a sitting president, that 3 million illegals voted.
Right.
That is an attack on the virtue of our democracy.
Yes.
And people will work backwards to defend it. Oh, you have to just take him. You can't take him literally. But he's talking. He's just trying to draw attention. He is a compulsive liar. All right.
First name. I just want to say that was the first name call we did. But we said we weren't going to.
But it's not true.
But that was the first name.
But you're a dad. You're also a parent. What do you say to when something is blatantly untrue and somebody walks up and says something outrageous that's blatantly untrue and they state it as fact? What is it?
Your real question, man. What do you say to your son if he says something that's blatantly untrue, right? That's really your question. What I would say, prove it.
Right. Okay. So
prove it.
If a sitting president makes a claim like that, they should say it with proof. You don't retroactively try to defend that. It's a big statement. All right, we've exchanged some jabs. I think we got a little bit of frustration off our chest about where we stand politically. If you would let me, sir, and this is on me 100%, I would like to get this back on track. Is that okay?
Go ahead. I'm on track. I'm fully on track.
I'm not implying otherwise. I'm just saying
okay.
All right. So Ronald Reagan was the first person you voted for.
Yes.
Is he or who is the president in your lifetime that you admire the most, and why?
I would say it would be Ronald Reagan because he ended the Cold War, where I grew up in a time when I had a deep-rooted fear of nuclear war. There was all these books coming out, World War III, how it was going to start in East and West Germany, that was going to be the nidus of the great apocalypse. And he put an end to that. He crushed the Soviet Union politically and financially. More than that, he was, as his moniker goes, the great communicator. He was a gifted, charismatic speaker, and that is important in the president. And the only other president that I would say that was more gifted and more charismatic was Barack Obama, who I think was the most charismatic, gifted speaker I have ever seen in my lifetime. Even more so than
Bill Clinton?
Yeah, more. Of course. I don't think Bill Clinton's a great speaker. I think he speaks to the common people, but I think Obama was a very charismatic speaker. I mean,
would you agree on a side note that maybe if people in Hillary's campaign listened to Bill a little more, maybe she would have gotten elected?
Absolutely. Yeah, she was a horrible candidate. Horrible candidate.
I disagree with that, sir, but I think that's common ground to say that she certainly should have been campaigning in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. My next question for you, and I'm not jumping the gun. In fact, it ties into all this, so I'm going to just try to make it one question. Was, well, what did you think of the Obama presidency? And I'm trying to just encapsulate you as much as I can possibly do that in a 45-minute hour conversation. So you voted for him the first time. But you didn't.
Hope and change. I was hooked on hope and change.
It's funny. What's me is that I supported her. I worked as a delegate for the Hillary Clinton campaign in 2008 here in Dallas, and I ended up supporting him, and I never looked back. I supported him in 2012, and part of why I think that he worked for me as a president because I didn't see him as the second coming of Christ. I didn't see him as this big hope and change guy. I just saw him as a sound, reasonable person. And I'm not implying that you fell for something and I didn't. I just mean that it's all about where we're at in life and what's going on in our personal lives and how a politician can move us. He actually moved me more in 2012 than did Nate, believe it or not. But what did you think of his presidency overall? If you could just recap his presidency in 2 to 3 minutes, sir, what would you say about it?
I think he'll go down as one of the worst presidents in this country's history. And I don't even know, you want me to tell you why? He destroyed my field, which is medicine. It just absolutely ravaged it on so many levels. That could be a whole other show, what Obamacare has done to the practice of medicine, which is my field. I know a lot about it. But more importantly, and very scarily, when he left office, he told Donald Trump that what keeps him awake at night is North Korea. Now, North Korea has been on the back burner since June 25th, 1950, which is important for two reasons. It was the day my parents got married and the day, as my mother would always point out, the Korean War started. So for 70-something years, we've been kicking this can down the road. We've kicked 5 nuclear weapons tests by North Korea down the road, to the point when Obama left, he told Donald Trump, this is my biggest fear. This is what keeps me up at night. And we're at the point now where it has to be addressed. Sort of like before Lincoln, James Buchanan, he didn't want to deal with what was going on in the Confederacy in the South. He didn't want to deal with it. So when he left, as he was leaving, he said to President Lincoln, sir, if you are as happy as coming into the presidency as I am as leaving, you, sir, are one happy man. So I think there is a parallel that I see with what Obama did with North Korea in the past 8 years and what James Buchanan avoided with the upcoming war. And we all, regardless of whether you're liberal, Republican, or whatever, we all need to hope and pray that President Trump is successful in dealing with North Korea.
Listen, I will never, ever, ever root for my president to fail on a foreign policy, from a foreign policy standpoint. Nobody. I want to avoid war, and if we get into war, I want us to be successful. You have to be at the down in the gutter of cynicism to vote otherwise. I do want Trump to fail on a domestic level because I believe in science. Sue me for that. I don't want the EPA stripped. I don't want religious discrimination against my Muslim brothers and sisters. There's a lot of things I don't want to succeed with the Trump presidency. But
we don't want that either. We don't want that.
But we all want us to be successful abroad. Listen, go back to David Frum's speech he wrote for President George W. Bush back in, and forgive me, I think it was 2003 or 4 when we talked about the axis of evil. Remember that speech?
Yes.
And I believe that was David Frum. And forgive me if I have that speech right or incorrect. I will cite that in a thread, but just we're recording here, so I'm gonna stick with it. And he called the axis of evil, and North Korea was part of it. We have an unhinged, insane dictator that has a Napoleon complex, if you ask me, if I just had to psychoanalyze them, and they have nuclear weapons, and things are scary. I was a little more comfortable with a professorial, nuanced president versus, our own unhinged, egomaniac president. But listen,
I'm just pointing out as we go along, it's the second and third names you called President Trump after you said we weren't going to go name calling.
We're not. Listen, I'm not going to name.
That's number 2 and number 3. But
doctor,
who's keeping track?
I'm not doctor. I'm not going to name call you, and you can take the high road and say Barack Obama was the worst president ever. And you can do that without saying.
I think he was a great guy. I would love to. If I had choice of hanging out with him, I don't think Donald Trump's a great guy, and I'm not going to pretend like I do. That's the difference. Don't you see that? That's the problem with this. I think George Bush is a great guy. I think Ronald Reagan was a great man. I think you're so filled with hatred of Donald Trump.
I don't.
That it causes your judgment. And I can prove it to you. You want me to prove it to you?
No. I hate. I don't like marginalizing minorities. I don't like.
No, but I think you hate him. I think from speaking to you and speaking to many, many others to you in the past 18 months on social media, I think you hate him so much is that you've lost some sense of reason to analyze his policies. And I think
okay, let me ask you this.
I can prove that.
And I appreciate the direction you're going in this. I am not going to make apologies for name calling him. I'm not going down that road. He is an egomaniac, and if he's not racist, he certainly caters to racism. He plays coy with racism, including people like David Duke. All right? He has a history of this stuff. This isn't stuff I'm pulling out of my ass. I have Muslim friends. I have friends that are living, they have aunts and uncles and cousins in countries that his so-called travel ban was trying to go into place. I don't think he's a good person. I'm not going to pretend like I do. I think we have not a bad president, but I think we have a bad human being in the White House.
Can you can you find anything nice to say about Donald Trump? Is there anything about him that you can say, wow, that's a good quality?
You know what? He talked about wanting to do term limits, and you know what? I'd support that 100%.
That's a policy. No, I'm saying as a person, is there anything personal about him that you say, wow, that's actually a good quality? No, really?
No.
So that actually kind of proves my point. That
No. It doesn't prove your point, because what should prove your point, sir, if you knew me, you could say, man, for Rick to say that, that's a big deal. Because Rick doesn't just say that about people, and he certainly doesn't say that about Republicans. Ask Rick about George W. Bush, and I'll take gloves off with liberals that attack him in a fashion that he doesn't deserve.
Maybe you don't have this visceral hatred of George W. Bush that you do of Donald Trump. How about this? What about him being a father? You've seen his kids talk. He's raised three. He's raised some wonderful kids.
Yeah, I'm a little disturbed by the way. I'm also disturbed.
You can't fake good children. You can't fake
children. His sons like to kill elephants and giraffes, and he talks in a weird sexual way about his oldest daughter that creeps me out. I'm sorry. There's nothing.
You talking about on Howard Stern? Oh my God.
No, I'm not talking about Howard Stern. I can show you comments he made about her on The View.
Let me just explain to you. Donald Trump is a performer. He is a performer. He's a television star. He's the only president ever that could walk into a room and say, well,
you're just justifying it.
Idea. We have to adjust the camera.
You're telling me why I should feel okay with the way this he talks about people in that fashion.
No, I'm saying that your visceral hatred of him is wrong because you're taking everything he says so literally that it just conjures up this hatred inside of you when he's a performer all his life.
Well, Doctor, he's a bad performer. I don't like his performance. And when he talks about doing a Muslim ban and then he becomes president and then he wants a travel ban that is all Muslim countries, yeah, I take a lot of issue with that. When he's starting to deport dreamers that are here trying to do better, when he lies about the contribution to Mexican immigrants in this country, I don't like it. I don't like that he has a vice president.
He's actually making an exception. He is no way deporting dreamers. He actually
but that is happening, and maybe he doesn't want it.
It may have happened accidentally to that one guy, which was a mistake. And I predict on your show right now, he will pardon that person and bring him back.
And if he does, I'll applaud it.
And
I promise you I will.
This past week. But he's made a statement. He's not looking to deport the dreamers.
But look at the people that he has around him. Jeff Sessions, Steve Bannon. You talk about your gay friends. I do as well. We both have gay friends and loved ones. Look at his vice president. Do you want to look at his record as governor and the things that he tried to implement to make it lawful and justifiable to discriminate against gays? I'm sorry. I'm not going to sit here just to be nice and say something about this person that I think is good. I don't think there's right now, and it breaks my heart, Doctor, because I have a lot of Republican friends and family. I have voted Republican. In 2000, if John McCain would have been the nominee, I would have fought like hell. I would have voted for him over Al Gore in a heartbeat. I don't hate Republicans. I don't hate conservatives. I don't hate people that have a different point of view than I do. What I do hate is I hate racism, I hate sexism, and I hate marginalizing minorities. All right.
Well, your president is neither racist nor sexist, nor does he marginalize majorities. So all those things you said.
No, he doesn't. You're right. He doesn't marginalize majorities. He marginalizes minorities.
The Democratic talking points. But yeah, we hear it on every CNN show. We hear it on every MSNBC
show. I'm not a lab rat, man. I'm talking to you from my heart, what I see and hear. I don't get my talking points from Anderson Cooper or Chris Matthews.
I understand, but I'm here on your show to just explain that what's in your heart is not shared by 63 million Americans. I know the majority of Americans voted like for Clinton, but 63 million Americans disagreed with what's in your heart.
First of all, I've never said, and I've said this to people left and right, I've got friends that are unhinged about Trump supporters. I have friends that have reached out to me saying, how could you possibly sit on a show with this guy? How could you talk to anybody that voted for this guy? And you know what I say to them?
Crazy. What do you say?
Doctor, I agree with you. It's absolutely crazy, which is why I'm sitting here with you. I said, you're part of the problem. I will never sit here and say that 63 million people are racist. That's ridiculous. What I will say is that if you're a racist, if you voted for Trump, doesn't mean you're a racist. But if you're a racist, you probably voted for Trump. And that's a problem. Okay?
That's a little skewed reasoning, but okay.
All right, all right, but let me ask you this. So what is your history with this man? Like, and you and I have said, we've talked on the phone, and there's been a lot of things that you've said that, I mean, I'll be honest with you, Doctor. There was a point where I was almost going, is this the right guest? Because you are so sound and fair and reasonable that I was like, is this going to make good radio, right? Our bantering right now is more than I thought we'd even do. And this isn't contrived, neither one of us. I'm not doing this for good radio. I have you here thinking the opposite because it's a lot easier to go find somebody that just has a lot of hate in their heart, that doesn't like minorities, that doesn't like Muslims, that doesn't, you know what I'm saying? And here we are. What I if I remember correctly, one of the things that you said to me, you know what, let me just ask you directly as opposed to speculating, and then you can let our audience know, sir. What is your history with Trump? Were you a fan of him prior to him running for president? Did you support him as a candidate? Was he your guy from the moment he announced?
Well, being a New Yorker, my history goes back even further than that. I mean, he grew up in Queens, maybe about 10 miles from where I grew up in Queens. So as a New Yorker in the 80s, we knew a lot about Donald Trump. He's a very flamboyant, kind of like, not Playboy-like, but he was in the media all the time in the late 80s, early 90s. He got things done. One of his big accomplishments was he rebuilt some really decrepit hotels and buildings that were in New York when New York was a really bad place in the late 80s and in the early 90s. He stepped in and built a lot of buildings in these very bad areas. He rebuilt the Central Park, a big skating rink in Central Park, where he built it under budget, ahead of time. And those were big issues in the media. And the media in New York actually liked Donald Trump until they realized, oh, this guy might be a president. And the media hates Republicans, as we all know. And that's when they turned on him, when they actually realized that this guy is serious. He just demolished 16 fellow Republicans. But prior to that, I really didn't know much about him. I'd never watched that show, whatever that show he was on. I thought having a show where you say you're fired, I think that was kind of like a dicky thing, actually. You know, where the main part of a show is you're fired. I never really was into that. But I stand with my fellow Americans, not on him, on his policy. That's what got him elected. I'm not saying you. I almost did say you. I don't want to make it personal. Most Democrats, including...
Quit dancing. Just talk. Don't worry about it. You're not going to offend me, man. Like, just say it.
Okay.
Just say it.
Hillary Clinton, her whole campaign was Donald Trump is this, Donald Trump is evil, Donald Trump is this and that. Same time, Donald Trump was giving speech after speech on policy and what he's going to do, where America is heading in the wrong direction. Well, what did Hillary do? Donald Trump's an evil man. The people that voted for him are deplorable, irredeemable.
Doctor, with all due respect,
resonate.
I got to interrupt that for just a second. The majority of his speeches, man, were lock her up. She's a criminal. She's this.
God. Obviously, you just watched the CNN.
Every single speech he gave. Yes, he talked about bringing jobs back. Yes, he talked about building a wall. I get all that, but to say that his position was the high road and she was the name caller.
Absolutely, 100%. 100%.
Listen,
I wouldn't say it was the high road. It was the policy road. The American people voted for him because of policy.
Crooked Hillary, Pocahontas. She's a criminal. Lock her up. For the love of God.
I'm not here to defend Donald Trump as being a showman, as being a bombastic
brings women that accuse Bill Clinton of rape to a freaking debate. Just with all due respect, Doctor, don't.
You know why? But what about the backstory about that? Why?
I don't want to get into all that because it's just silly to me.
You don't want to brought it up, not me.
But I'm talking about
the day on CNN. They brought out all these women that came out of the woodwork accusing Donald Trump of who even knows what 20 years prior. So every day on CNN, that's what you saw 24/7, and we didn't.
What I saw every day on CNN was every speech that he gave in its totality. It was millions of dollars for advertisement, and also the drip of every email that was leaked via WikiLeaks. I mean,
you're watching Donald Trump's coverage on CNN. The American people that voted for him was actually watching Donald Trump give speeches.
Why are you just giving this like putting me in this box with CNN? I don't even understand what that means.
That means
they would play his speeches in there.
Can I explain what it means? You just asked me. What does it mean? You're putting me in the box.
Please proceed.
When Donald Trump would give a speech, CNN would take maybe 60 seconds of that speech, maybe a controversial part, And that's what they would highlight. And I saw it so many times. A 60-minute speech, they took 1 minute out of it where he may have said, especially this speech where he gave of extreme vetting, and they turned it into a Muslim ban. He hates Muslims. That's not what that was about. That was about protecting this country when people coming in could not be vetted, not because they are Muslims, not because it's a Muslim country, but because the country has no central organization where you can see where these people are coming from. There are about 70 Muslim countries in the world. He didn't ban people coming in from all the countries.
You're right. If I say that if I'm the KKK and I only target a few black cities in the country, but not every one of them, it means I'm not a racist. Doctor, he called for a Muslim ban. He's done an interview with 60 Minutes, and he says, I think there's something fundamentally wrong with Islam as a religion and that they hate us. He gets into office, and he calls for a travel ban of predominantly Muslim countries. And, and hold on, and Rudy Giuliani goes on national TV and admits the fact that after that speech,
countries. And what was wrong with that? What was wrong with
because that's his version of a Muslim ban. And then Rudy Giuliani goes on national TV.
Indonesia has the largest Muslim population in the world.
Who does?
How come Indonesia wasn't on that? How come Indonesia wasn't on the ban?
Because Doctor, he couldn't dare go on as sitting president and say I'm banning every Muslim country.
But he did dare to go on and piss you off a lot of people by Muslim ban.
The guy called for a Muslim ban, and then he gets elected, and then he starts trying to ban travel from Muslim countries.
Countries that were chosen by Barack Obama.
Rudy Giuliani goes
like having people that could not be adequately vetted.
Rudy Giuliani
has the largest population of Muslims in the world. They weren't on the list.
Doctor, listen. If your argument is that it wasn't a Muslim ban because he wasn't trying. If your argument is it wasn't a Muslim ban because he wasn't trying to ban every Muslim country in the world, that is nonsensical with all due respect, sir. All right? He has to start somewhere. Now, hold on a minute. Now, let me just say this. Rudy Giuliani also goes on national TV and says that Trump came to him and said, how do I do this Muslim ban legally? And he explained to him how, which is exactly what he did. Now, listen, these are the kind of arguments that make my head spin. To say that he wasn't trying to ban Muslims, or I have a buddy from Buffalo, in fact, and he's like, no, Trump wasn't mocking that handicapped reporter. I'm like, what are you talking about? He wasn't mocking him. Oh, he's made hand gestures before. He wasn't mocking him directly. Look, we can talk about Trump, and you can say that he tapped into economic anxieties, that you like that he's a straight shooter, that you think he's going to be good for the economy. That's fine. Great. Those are conversations and debates worth having. But to say that he didn't call Mexicans rapists, that he wasn't trying to ban Muslims, that he wasn't mocking a handicapped reporter, that he wasn't scolding a Gold Star mother because she was also a Muslim, it's just not even it's a non-starter. Those things are just empirically untrue. Saying otherwise, I should say. Now we got off track here. So what? Let me ask you this, because I mean I know, and listen, and I appreciate this with you. We're both trying. This is a frustrating conversation for both of us. I can tell by your tone, certainly with mine, it's not easy, man. And that's why this conversation is important. My goal at the end of this conversation, damn it, is some common ground. And if we don't have it here, I'm going to beg you to come back. And if it takes us 50 fucking shows, I want something. So let me ask you this. If you don't mind, give me your top 3 reasons why you voted for him.
I can give you 100, but if you want my top 3, first of all,
if you don't mind, or just your top 2, or your top 5, whatever you want, just give me. If you don't mind, give me a list.
Number 1 is border security. Number 1, and I would say most Trump supporters felt that border security is the number 1 reason, and that will include what you call as a Muslim ban, which was not a Muslim ban because there are 70 predominantly Muslim countries in the world, and only I think 6. We're on that list.
We addressed that, sir. We addressed that.
Okay. Second, the pouring of illegal immigration from Mexico. We, Trump supporters, Republicans, were all for legal immigration. My wife is a legal immigrant. My ex-wife is a legal immigrant. We know Donald Trump's wife is a legal immigrant. We're all for legal immigration. We are not for illegal immigration. And most Republicans feel that the Democrats are for illegal immigration because when these people come into our country, they're eventually going to vote Democratic, and that will destroy the Republican Party. We see through that, and we understand that that is one of the reasons. And to Donald Trump's credit, a lot of the reason the Republicans never dealt with illegal immigration was because business used illegal immigrants for cheap labor. So this issue is a two-party issue that was to the detriment of the country, and is what Donald Trump referred to as the swamp that needed to be cleaned up by an outsider. Because the Republicans weren't going to do it. The Democrats weren't going to do it. He said he's going to do it. That's the number one reason most of us voted for him.
We had negative migration, net migration, in the last many years of the Obama administration.
What does that mean, actually? What does that mean?
That means more people were leaving versus coming in. It was at an all-time low. So this notion that people weren't doing things prior to Trump is just simply untrue. Even during the Bush years, there was a lot of policies and a lot of focus on illegal immigration. The problem that I have with that talking point, look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that when Trump says that a country has to have borders, he's right. That is, and I will agree with him on that. It's all about how you handle it and what you do and what battles you pick. But what I don't like is this notion that we paint illegal immigrants as something detrimental to our economy, when in fact that's just not true. If we deported right now, if we were able to scoop up every quote-unquote illegal immigrant and get them out of the country, our economy would collapse. And that's also a fact.
We don't want to scoop up all the illegal immigrants. This is what needs to be done. We need to seal the border with a wall to prevent the problem that has happened from ever happening again. Then we need to find a pathway to citizenship for the people that are here. And we start by getting rid of the convicted felon illegal immigrants, getting rid of sanctuary cities. These are all policies that really touched a lot of people that voted for him.
No, and there's actually a few things that you said in there that I agree with. With all due respect, I think the wall is a joke. I think it's a joke.
Why?
First of all, I don't think it's going to get built, and if they may start it, it's not going to get finished.
But why do you think it's a joke?
We don't because it's so expensive, and it's just a big symbolism of hate. Let's have policies that make sense.
Symbolism of hate. I think a lot of people disagree with that. I know you feel
well. That's fine if they do, but it absolutely is. And also, let's face it, man. From a logistical standpoint, that's not going to work. That's just nonsense. Why? Drugs are being smuggled through waterways. People are flying. People can climb.
Do you agree with that? It will make it more difficult.
Look, yeah, it'll make it a little more difficult, but it'll make it a lot more difficult. It's risk versus reward. We're talking about you're fiscally conservative. You want to build something that's $30 billion?
Yes,
I mean, what is that thing? And what is the reward from that? But what I did appreciate what you said is you talk about the people that are here and that you do recognize that illegal immigrants can contribute to our economy. And I thank you for that. I appreciate that. That is a problem with a lot of Republicans in this day and age, especially. You talk about Ronald Reagan. He's turning over in his grave with some of these people, the way they're talking, the Steve Kings of the world and whatnot. But you look at someone like Trump, and the guy, his own clothing line, things are overseas. He has employees.
That's why he is the perfect man. He knows what's all.
So hire criminals.
Hey, can I ask, am I allowed to curse on your show?
Fuck yes.
He knows what the fuck is going on. He's a CEO. By the way, he's an executive. Only an executive like him knows what's going on. That's why his ties, which are great. I don't know if you ever had a Trump tie. They are great, but they were all manufactured in China. He understands why on the business sense. I understand why on the business sense. I have run a company. I have supported people. I've written paychecks to people. When you have that mindset, you know if it's cheaper to build them in China, Let's make them in China. He knows what the problem was.
But if you're so passionate about it, and it means so much to you, how hard would it be, especially for a supposedly multi-billionaire, and I don't believe that he's not, but how hard would it be for him to take the high road and say, you know what? Despite the fact that this is going to be more expensive, everything's going to be everything's going to be here, and I'm going to lead the charge on this. And you're telling me that it's smarter business is the way he did it?
His company.
It's just we can justify anything with this guy.
Rick, it was smarter for his company to build it in China because
it would be better for the country. Country over company. Make a position. Take a stand. Take some sacrifice. And then take that to the American people.
Rick Shew, you are right. Take a stance. You know what Donald Trump did? He was so pissed off on how this country was running with all his compadre friends sending their factories overseas. He says, I'm going to take a stand. I will be president of the United States, and I will fucking change the system. Thank you. You just proved my point.
No, I didn't prove your point because I'm not going to sit here and accept the fact that he made all these sacrifices.
Something in me told me you weren't going to say, yeah, Doug, you're right. You're right.
Because, Doug, all he had to do was one time say, I'm not going to make my ties overseas, man.
Oh, come on. He was doing it.
He had every opportunity to do it. How many illegals is he employing right now on his golf courses and his hotels? I promise you, hundreds.
Maybe.
But I'm okay with that. I'm just saying that he's full of shit. Nobody's more full of shit than this guy. All right?
Oh, my God. Oh, yeah.
Just tell me one time, Doug.
I just told you why he's not.
Just say, I'm going to make a stand. I'm going to make my shirts in the U.S. Oh, wait. That's bad for my business. No, I won't. I'm going to just run my mouth about it.
He took it one better. Him making shirts in the United States, it might be a little bit better for our economy. But him making legislative policy to bring other CEOs back into the United States, that's actually better than Donald Trump saying, I'm going to open up a tie factory in Albany, New York.
What would be better? What would be the most amazing is both.
Overseas.
Why do they have to be mutually exclusive? Both. Do both. You do both, you take a stand like that, you'd earn a little bit more respect from more than just the 60-something million people that voted for you.
Yeah, he didn't do both, but he did. So he did one. He became president of the United States. Now he'll make policies to get everybody's factories overseas, or as much as he can, back to the United States. Because he understands the reasons why they're overseas.
Yeah. He could have just. He could have. How about this? I'm not saying that that's not true, Doug. What I'm saying, sir, is that he could have taken a stance and just had something made here and say, listen, I'm doing it right now in my own company with my shirts. And he didn't do it. All right? Didn't do it. Now, listen, now you're a doctor.
Yes, I am.
You're an accomplished physician, and healthcare is a complicated topic. So you've expressed your disdain for Obamacare. All right? I understand that. What do you want to see happen? Do you want to see this bill that just passed in the House become law?
Well, let me tell you how I stand on Obamacare. First of all, Obamacare is a bill that was forced on the American people without one Republican signing on to it. But moreover than that,
well, can I just say this, and I want you to talk, and I don't mean to interrupt, but it did have its day in court. And this Trump care bill is being shoved down our throats, even more so than that bill. So we can. That's fair to say, correct?
Yeah, no, and actually, we can go into that whole court. I totally agree.
Okay, that's cool. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead, and I won't interrupt you. I promise. Please go ahead.
Okay, the problem with Obamacare, it has pretty much wreaked havoc on the medical profession in so many ways. We can do a whole 2-hour show just on that. But most of medical care given in this country is really not given by big, giant hospital institutions. They're given by small, family-owned medical practices. And so on one side of the coin, it's a small, family-owned medical practice. On the other side of the coin, it's a legitimate small business, a corporation, LLC. And Obamacare has destroyed so many of them. I can't tell you how many of my friends have including myself, have had to have joined giant institutions because we could not do what we love to do. I love practicing medicine. I love patients come to me in my type of practice. I know about my patients' families, what they did over the holiday, their kids. They know about mine. It's really, even though I'm in the big city of Manhattan, it's really kind of like a small town type of medical practice, because every doctor, no matter where he is, can create that type of environment, and that's the one that I and many of my friends have. But the problem with Obamacare in a small practice like mine, there are a lot of problems, but one particular one is all the regulations that are forced upon us. So much so that a small business like mine, I don't have the staff, and a lot of medical offices do not have the staff to keep up with all the regulatory mandates. And just to give you a little bit of an example, we were required under penalty and threat of financial harm to ask every one of our patients what ethnicity they consider themselves. And then the form is stated, you have to actually write it out specifically as Obamacare dictated it. One of the things I recall is Native American, African American, and then I used the word Hispanic. As an eye doctor, I don't want to have to ask my patients, excuse me, I know your eye is red or you have a pimple on your eye, but do you consider yourself Hispanic? That's insulting, I think, to a lot of people. It's embarrassing to ask. So what I did in my practice, I put it on a form trying to explain that with the new Affordable Care Act, we have to add that. Now you take that and multiply it by tenfold, at least, these little bits of regulation that we have to ask, and we have to do it on what's called an electronic health record. Electronic health records are great. They are great. And the medical industry would have come upon them on their own, but this was forced upon us. At first, Obamacare held a little carrot in front of us that we were given a little bit of financial incentive to incorporate an electronic health record into our practice. But then, quickly it turns around that if you don't use it, you're going to be financially penalized. And what's happening a lot of times in medicine, as Tom Price testified at his confirmation hearing, because he's a doctor, he's ran a small practice. A lot of times the doctors are clicking on ridiculous things that are required under Obamacare that have nothing to do with why Mrs. Smith came to me with her little pimple on her eye. But I have to click a certain amount of things to qualify to meet the standards, otherwise I'll be financially penalized. That's just an example of the regulatory environment placed upon the doctors. So in New York City, a lot of doctors, including my own practice, we could not keep up with that. So I joined the larger institution here in the city. There are a lot of them, and they're swallowing up these medical practices. It's really, really sad. I mean, the practices will remain, but it's lost the family characteristic. We've now become like employees of these large hospital institutions. So,
but was this a direct result of Obamacare, or was this something that was happening over time just by virtue of bureaucracy in the medical field? And Obamacare, it may have happened on Obamacare's watch. There might have been aspects about Obamacare that sped up the process.
These were all
specified. Can you say
Obama.
this was like night and day difference from the time that bill was put into practice into law? All these things happened. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, but it wasn't night and day. This was implemented over time, and there was a planned implementation over time. And that's what happened, because that was the environment of the Obamacare. It was a very centrally trying to organize. The road to hell, as they say, is paved with the best intentions. The intentions may have been well to get everybody using the same interacting software medical system. So if you go to a hospital there, I can see your medical record. There are glitches. It didn't happen that way. There's a lot of other problems.
But what if we say this? What if people like myself that say, listen, Obamacare is not perfect. There's not a program of the magnitude of Obamacare in American history that is perfect. Over time, it has to be there has to be changes. It has to adapt with the certain environments, etc. But is the solution to scrape it, to start over, and to replace it with a bill that, quite frankly, I don't look at the Trump care bill as anything. It's not a health care bill. It's a tax cut bill. That's all it is. There's nothing about health care in that bill. That is a footnote at best. So just a direct question. Are you a fan of Trump care?
I am not a fan of the Trump care bill as it stands now, and I don't think a lot of Republicans are, because it hasn't gone through the legislative process. It's been created. It's now going to go into the Senate, where through Senate debate and rewriting of the bill will be softened up. There are a lot of more moderates in the Senate, and they don't have to deal with the crazy Republican caucuses that are in the House. So the bill will be softened up in the Senate, then go back to the House for reconciliation. But it's a very important bill to get this changed, because there are a lot of basic fundamental problems in Obamacare that did not address some of the reasons that a lot of doctors consider why healthcare is so expensive. Okay. What was Obamacare, like a 2,000-page document? There wasn't one paragraph on tort reform. The Republicans want tort reform. We can say that there was not tort reform placed in it because the lawyer lobby contributes a lot to the Democratic Party. But there are a lot of course, there are legitimate malpractice lawsuits. Everybody knows that. Nobody's perfect. Doctors make a mistake, and some doctors really screw up bad, and they should be held accountable. But in this litigious environment in the United States, to not have tort reform in a sweeping overhaul of medical care is unfounded and wrong, because there are a lot of lawsuits that are being charged against doctors for no reasons other than there are a lot of signs on the New York subway that says, have you been injured by a doctor? Have you been hurt in any way? Call us. So what doctors end up doing, as, again, Tom Price testified in his confirmation hearings, and he really has a good understanding. I'm a big fan of him, but that could be a whole other issue for another day. But the main point that he was making is that what doctors do today is they practice defensive medicine. They will order test after test, cover their asses just in case, when really it's not medically indicated, and 10, 15 years ago, no one would be even thinking of it. So a lot of people end up getting the $1 million workup when it was not necessary. That is a direct result out of the lack of tort reform, and it's a cause of higher health care costs in the system overall.
Do you support single payer?
No, I don't.
Okay, why not?
I believe in a competitive marketplace. We are a capitalistic society, and
so let me ask you this: we're a capitalistic society, so you believe in healthcare just in the same way that you believe in any other business. Is healthcare a right?
No, I don't think healthcare is. It depends on what you mean by a right.
Because every American citizen deserves the right to proper healthcare, regardless of their financial status, regardless of their gender, their age, their race, their religion. Do they have a right as a human being, as an American?
Absolutely.
All right.
Yes, I absolutely believe that.
Because a lot of Republicans don't believe that, man. They believe it's a
privilege.
It's a privilege, and it's a privilege based on a lot of the same ways, whether or not you go see a matinee or a dollar theater, or you go see a $13 movie on a Friday night, or you get a gourmet pizza, or you go to Domino's. They look at it in the same way, and I find that way of thinking quite disgusting, and so does every other civilized nation in the world, I might add. So let me ask you this. What is your, if you could say this in just 30 to 60 seconds, what would your solution be for healthcare? What are just some of the 3 to 5 main points that you say as a doctor, as a citizen, that these are the things that need to happen for healthcare to be fair and proper in the United States of America in 2017?
That's a good question. First of all, I mentioned reforming the regulatory environment, freeing up the doctors to be doctors and practice medicine. I mentioned that. I mentioned tort reform. I mentioned access to Medicare for all Americans. I think that answers in a roundabout way what you said about a right to medical care. Republicans get a little bit uneasy when Democrats start using that word? Do you believe such and such group has a right to this? We're just a little bit uneasy with that, but I'm just saying it in a different way. All Americans should have access to medical care. If you would have presented it that way, there would have been no hesitation.
I have access to go buy a Lamborghini, doctor. That doesn't mean I can go buy a Lamborghini. There's a difference in access and something that's truly tangible, and that's a right. I have access to buy a $3 million home. I unfortunately can't afford it, but I have access to it.
But there are going to be some people in a country founded on capitalism, which unfortunately means in a capitalist society there are the haves and there are the have-nots. You may not like that, Rick, and the Democrats may not like that fact that in a capitalistic society you have the haves section and the have-nots.
That's fine, depending on, is someone drinking the proper bottle of wine? Are they eating Wagyu or Kobe beef versus a steak from a buffet at a diner? That I get that. When it comes to healthcare, there's no haves and have-nots.
But there is. There actually is.
There actually, you're right. There is, and it's fundamentally wrong on every single level.
Let me just expand on what I mean and where there is a difference of haves and have-nots, which I know the liberal Democrats hate, and that's why they hate this president so much, because he's taking away that fundamental feeling by the liberal Democrats that we deserve the government to take care of everything in our lives. But that's not the case. That's not how America works. It will never work that way. We are not a socialist country. Thank God we remain not a socialist country. But let me just answer your point. Haves and have-nots, how that works in medicine. The haves, someone that has worked and has accumulated wealth in this country, will have access to a different type of health care. They may go into a very cushiony doctor's office with a very refined giant TV, a very welcoming staff, but they're going to be treated to the same health care as the person that has no money, is homeless off the street, and has to go into a medical clinic provided by a hospital. That's the access where those people that don't have the means, as some other people, get access to medical care. And let me just tell you something, to cut the BS, because I know the system. In a lot of cases, it's the same doctor working in both places. When I was a resident, part of my job was I was working the clinic, okay? So I would go see a lot of the poor population in New York City, and I would report to, when I was a resident, to my attending physician, whatever the case was. They would go in and see the patient. And then the afternoon came, another doctor would come in there, and these same attendings now go to their cushy offices and see all the other people with more of the means. But the bottom line is, the people are getting pretty much the same health care because they're being treated by the same doctors in different settings.
That might have been true in terms of your residency, and then in your residency they're making you a well-rounded physician and you're doing that. But that is not true in the sense, I have friends, and this is not just anecdotal, I have friends that do not have proper insurance. And they go here in Dallas, which is Parkland, which is more or less a government-run hospital. And you know what they get? They get interns. They never see the same doctor twice. They can't get properly diagnosed. Are they going into the hospital? Are they getting care? They get a needle in their arm? Are they getting a bed? Are they get some food? Yes. They're not getting the proper care that someone like you get and I get. And
I'm sorry, but that is an incorrect assessment of the medical system in the United States. They may be seen by interns, but each intern is overseen by an attending everywhere.
Those patients are not getting diagnosed properly because they don't have a physician that's truly assigned to them.
Absolutely not true. They might actually be getting more intense care because they're being overseen on many levels, but at multiple levels. The intern's being overseen by the resident, who's being overseen by the higher resident.
But listen to the bureaucracy of that. Because I'm blessed with good income, and my wife and I both do well, and I have good doctors. I don't have to worry about that bullshit. I don't have to worry about the layers of people that, well, this person will talk to this person, they'll talk to this person, they'll eventually get to somebody that's kind of in charge of it all.
But when you go into these clinics, you may not see the same doctor all the time. But it's like that in many higher level practices. When a woman goes to see an OB, they usually share practice with 7 other OBs. They might not see the same, and it always gets them upset. I mean,
but that's a difference in going to a physician that has a practice, that has people on his staff that are business partners, and that's not the same thing as not having a physician, a doctor that's assigned to you. That we're not talking about 3 or 4 to 5, maybe 6, 7 people that are partners in a practice. We're talking about a variety of different physicians that never speak to one another.
But they're getting the same medical care.
So let me ask this, because we can do this all day long, and I don't want to take up too much time on this because we've talked about it a lot, and I appreciate your input. And obviously, your input, you're a physician, and it's important that people hear what you have to say. So if you don't mind, just to wrap it up, let me ask you this. So what do you want to see happen with healthcare? What do you want the Senate to do? What is it what bill do you want to see? Do you want to see them repeal and replace Obamacare by virtue of like just something symbolic? Or are there things in the Obamacare like, hey, let's just tweak things and make things better? What's the answer here? Because right now it's just political football and everybody's suffering. And we keep doing this every time that somebody gets back in power, and the Democrats will do it in 2020 or 2024, then they're going to repeal the Trump care thing, and they're going to do their own health care bill. If we don't get something that's bipartisan, now this is going to go on forever. Agree?
Agree, but you're not going to get something bipartisan with the way the Congress is operating today, because it seems anything the president or the executive branch wants is evil, and we are going to block it at all costs. So that's a big problem.
He has all 3 branches of government right now, and he can't even get Obamacare repealed. So if you place that blame on anybody, place it on your own party. I mean, it's a civil war.
There are some rules.
The Democrats have no power right now with this concern.
There are rules of the Senate right now to pass these types of bills. You do need actually 60 votes in the Senate, which the Republicans do not have at this point. So it has to be, as you said, a bipartisan agreement to the bill. But the problem is Obamacare was fundamentally flawed. And the fundamental flaw, the Achilles heel that brought it down, was the assumption that healthy young people were going to buy health care to subsidize people that are not as healthy. And that just didn't happen. So they tried, okay, so we'll tax them, and we'll use the taxes to subsidize.
The whole bill gave a lot of power to states, and a lot of, like right here in Texas, for instance, and Greg Abbott's not expanding Medicaid. There's a lot of opposition for people to not make this bill work. But look, at the end of the day, you're a doctor. I'm a person who cares about people. We want people to get proper health care. So let's just hope that whatever the hell passes is bipartisan, and whether it's tweaking Obamacare or replacing it with something quote-unquote better, I don't care about the politics of it. I just want people taken care of, and I don't want this constant, because you know this better than anybody, if there's this constant tug-of-war, with every time a party gets into power and they're going to get in there and start messing with healthcare, what is that going to do to the system? That's going to wreak havoc. It's going to make insurance companies very nervous that they already are. It's going to create more of a mess than it is ever going to be able to fix. So let's kind of move on to the last phase of this, Doctor. It's been a robust and interesting conversation. Hopefully people are interested in it. But when I think about the primary, and I think about Trump, and I think about him mocking and disrespecting a Gold Star mother when he should have just taken the high road and said a Gold Star mother can do or say whatever she wants to do because she's a Gold Star mother. He doesn't have the decency to do that. When he calls for a Muslim ban,
he didn't mock a Gold Star mother. Let's just say what actually happened.
He absolutely mocked.
You used the word mock. But you used the word mock. Let's just disseminate to our audience what actually you consider mocking, please.
What I consider mocking is the fact that she is a mother of a child that was lost and fought in war and died, and he had to sit there, and as opposed to just keeping his mouth shut or just saying something nice about her, had to make a reference to her being a Muslim and referring to something in a third world country where Muslim women aren't able to speak. This isn't a liberal point of view. There are a lot of Republicans who at the time had decency to stand up for this, whether it was John McCain, whether it was Lindsey Graham, whether it was Marco Rubio, that you just leave Gold Star mothers alone. You don't go there. And he went there. And he only did it because she's a Muslim, because he never would have said anything even quasi-derogatory about anybody else. But his disdain for Islam and Muslims has been apparent since he decided to run for office. It's why he.
Okay, we all know that moment on the Democratic stage at their convention was an orchestrated, rehearsed moment, and it was meant to hurt Donald Trump.
Right.
Okay,
you're right.
It wasn't a spontaneous moment. What his name was, where he took out the Constitution. I believe he actually.
Yeah, but you know what? That's okay, because he has a right to do that. Because first of all, he has a right to do that as a person of free speech, and also as a fact that he is someone who's having issues with his president, and this president has marginalized this man's religion, called for a ban on his religion entering the country, and had it on his website, did it more than once, said on 60 Minutes or 2020, whatever interview, that Islam hates us. And you think about George Bush after 9/11 and going to mosque and talking about that Muslims are our neighbors and our friends and our loved ones, and we will not declare war on a religion. And then you have this guy in 2016 as the antithesis of that. It is repulsive. It's repulsive what they were doing. But it's not just that. It's mocking the POWs. Do you accept? Let's move on from that, because we'll talk about that for an hour, and it's going to make me furious, and so we're not going to get anywhere. But did you get offended when he talked about POWs aren't really POWs because POWs?
He as a candidate attacked John McCain. I actually was. I'm not here to defend Donald Trump's character. I've said he can be a fucking asshole. Yes, okay. He can. All right. I'm not here to defend his character.
He also mocked
him. We voted for him not because he wasn't an asshole. We voted him for him because of his policies.
But
when he said about John McCain, I said that was horrible. I'm not defending what he said.
He mocked a handicapped reporter. He talked about Megyn Kelly having a period because she dared to ask tough questions, because how sexist and grotesque is that? The man's repulsive. How does someone like yourself, that's a decent person, who's a good person, who's a family man, who's a beautiful family. I've seen your pictures on Facebook. We hooked up on Facebook and we started talking. You have beautiful kids and a wife. How do you reconcile voting for a person who's done all the things that he has done? Is it that important to you? Is his policies, do you really believe in him that much with his policies, that all that heinous shit is superseded by this?
Absolutely, 100%. I believe it. I think most of evangelical Christians, you know what?
Don't get me started with that bullshit. Okay, that is the biggest bunch of nonsense I've ever heard in my life. They threw their support behind a twice-the-force pussy grabber because they're more obsessed about their right-wing agenda than they are anything that has to do with religion. I don't want to hear about evangelicals. It is a disgrace.
Wow, but okay, so you can attack the evangelical Christians.
Absolutely, I can, because everything about him is, there's not a thing about this man and what he has done and said that has anything to do with Scripture or Christ or Christianity. Nonsense. They want to vote for him because they want their taxes lowered or whatever. That's fine, but don't give me this nonsense that he's some kind of evangelical dream come true, because it's ridiculous.
He's not. It was all compromised. But I just want to show you the hypocrisy in
their hypocrisy. 93% of them voted for him.
Okay. No, I'm not saying that. I'm talking about the hypocrisy of people that espouse your talking points. You just said about you can't say anything about the peaceful, loving Islamic religion. Mind you, the world has over 1 billion Muslims. Most of them, if not all of them, are peaceful, loving family people. Nobody doubts that. Just like the overwhelming majority of the German people or the Japanese people in World War II were peaceful, loving family people. But is that little 5% of the Nazis that end up killing 20 million people? It was that little 5% of the Japanese population that wreaked havoc on the Chinese people in 1940 and 1941, that still is a scar on the Chinese today when it comes to thinking of Japan. So although the majority of the Islamic population, the 1.1 billion of them, are peaceful, loving people, they are irrelevant to the small minority who wants to destroy Western civilization. Now, whether you accept
they are irrelevant.
They are irrelevant.
You just said it. That right there is what sets us a galaxy apart.
No, you are misunderstanding my words. They are irrelevant the same way that the 90% of the German population in World War II that just wanted to have families and take care of their kids were irrelevant to the havoc that the 5 or 10% of the SS or Nazis wreaked in the 20 million people that were dead in Europe, or the 5 or 10% of the Japanese people that were imperialist and wreaked havoc on the women and people of China. That's what I mean.
I can also look across history when Christians we don't brush with a broad stroke here.
Wait. If you want to go back 1,000 years, let me just finish my point. The point is, my point was that there are 1.1 billion Muslims on this planet. The overwhelming majority is peaceful, family-loving people. I know a lot of them. There's a large population in New York. But the fact of the matter is, there is a portion of Islam, just like there are portions of a lot of religions, just like this is a small portion of a giant pie that wants to destroy our way of life and Western civilization.
What's your point?
My point was, you would not allow me to say that 5 minutes ago. You were saying, "Oh my God, this is horrible. How can you can label these people?"
First of all, you're making my point for me. The vast majority of Muslims are peaceful, loving people. Right. So yeah, when you have a person trying to be president and he says Islam hates us, I want to ban Muslims from entering the country. Yeah, that's offensive. I would also be offended if someone said that about Jews or Christians or atheists.
So my point is, the problem with speaking to people of your political viewpoint is that you don't have any standards. In one statement, you're saying that, how dare I label any portion of the Islamic population as being bad. Yet you just broadly says you can't stand any of the evangelicals.
No, hold on. There's a world of a difference in saying that we want to ban a religion over 1 billion people because there's a handful of bad apples. Versus evangelicals that treated Trump like he was a Christian second coming of Christ evangelical. I don't have a problem with who they vote for. If they want to vote for somebody because they want their taxes lowered, that's fine. But this notion that Obama was somebody else, that he wasn't really a Christian, that he was something different, but this guy, this twice divorced pussy grabber who was on record when he was running for president saying he's never even asked God for forgiveness, suddenly is this beacon of salvation with the evangelical crowd is offensive to, by the way, evangelicals like my friend Pastor Philip Larson in Oklahoma City that finds that whole thing repulsive because there's nothing about this man that has anything to do with Christian behavior, Christian points of view, nothing. And that's why that's so frustrating to me, because that has nothing to do with him and his religious beliefs or his virtue of character. It has to do with policies and an agenda. And that's why I get upset about that. All right, so here's
So you retract your statement that
I never retracted anything.
So you retract your statement when you said that evangelicals are a disgrace. I believe that's what you said.
The evangelicals that threw their support behind Trump, acting like because he was something, it was because of something to do with religion, is a disgrace. If they wanted to support him based on policy, that's their right. I don't care. But this getting behind him and treating him like he was something special and angelic, that's repulsive.
I don't think they, but I accept your changing of your statement.
Not only is that not a change in my statement, this is the exact same position I have held. I have a podcast that's live right now. You can go and find it on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and it's called A Religion in America. And it's a conversation with myself, with a Christian pastor, and my friend who's a Muslim. And I will make the same exact points I'm making right now in that same podcast. I have been consistent about this for over a year. There's not a gotcha moment here. There's nothing that you're putting me in a corner on. This is how I've always stood on this. It's how I always will stand on it. And I do find that disgraceful. All right, so this is... Hey, listen, now, man, sparks flew on that. My whole point was to get to this question, and I'm going to just ask you, and I'm not going to question it or counter it. It's a two-part question. Are you proud of your vote? My guess is yes, but please answer. And if so, what are your expectations for this president going forward? And the floor is yours.
Okay, I am very proud of my vote. There was a poll out, I believe, probably 2 weeks ago that states 96% of people that voted for Trump, despite the all-hate, destroy Trump media that's been pounding him 24/7 since November 8th, 96% still are not buying into that. We are not going to be satisfied until Donald Trump is in cuffs walking down into his impeachment trials. We do support him. We still do. What are my goals of the presidency? I expect the economy to increase. I expect our borders to be secured. And I would hope that we find pathways to citizenship eventually for the innumerable amount of undocumented people in this country. I think that's what everybody truly wants. You know, you can say that, oh, he's going to be going after the illegal chambermaids or the people working illegally. That's just a dissemination of wrong information. There are mistakes in all systems. People, end up in wrong places, but that's not a fault of the system in general. There's a fault where the system needs to be tweaked. We need to seal our borders and then deal with the millions of people that are here illegally. Find a pathway to citizenship for them. I think that you can reach bipartisan agreement on that.
Well, what I would like to do on that note is to leave it on a bipartisan statement. Unfortunately, with all due respect, I don't think that is the point of view of most people in your party. But I'm glad that you do. And why don't we end it on a note that we agree on? And may I just say that, and I'm not trying to rush this. This has gone out now for an hour and a half. Time to wrap it up. We could do this for another 10 hours, and quite frankly, if you're okay with it, I'd love to have you back on sometime, and let's discuss the Trump presidency every quarter or whatever as it's going along. Would you be open to coming back?
Absolutely. And even though we do disagree, I think there is a basic real fondness of each other. I think you're a great guy, and I really appreciate the opportunity to come out and present my point of view. Nothing I've said to you was personal, and I don't take anything that you said to me was personal. So I was a little worried that, hey, maybe we like each other, even though we hardly know each other, but we do respect each other, maybe a little too much to mix it up. But I think we can separate our political viewpoints with our personal viewpoints.
And just to
the
remind,
country can get that.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to remind our audience, our history is all about this episode. I said at the top of the show, I'll say it one more time. I reached out on social media and asked if somebody knew somebody that would be interested, to come on the show and do this. I also reached out to Jeremy and Michael, my Left Shew partners, and said, hey guys, I kind of want to do this on my own, and got their blessings for that as well. And then we have a mutual friend in New York, of all places, Eric. He reached out to you, you reached out to me, and so I wanted to get to know you a little bit just so to make you comfortable, and didn't want to just bring you on the show. And we had a fondness for one another, and it continues. And here's what I hope people get out of this show, is that no matter what our political differences are, if we do sit and talk, because you and I talked first and foremost about family. I just want to get to know you a little bit before you came on and did the show. We talked about our kids. We talked about our wives. We talked about New York as a city you and I both love. Once you establish that with people, and once there's a human being, and you're not a comment thread on Facebook. You're not an anonymous person just trying to get under my skin, making snarky comments, and we're all guilty of that on social media. You're a human being that I've seen, that you have a family, you have a profession, and you care about your country, and you give a damn about what happens in our society. And then all of a sudden, our conversation has to be human. And we can't just bomb throw. And we can't just try to outsmart ass the other, because we're sharing, this is our country, man. If we don't figure out how to talk to one another, and more importantly, how to listen, we're not going to get anywhere, ever. And so for that, I thank you, because you gave me a lot to think about, especially about healthcare. I think you're a fine gentleman, and I hope that whoever listens to the show, whether it's 800 people or 5,000 people or 10,000 people, that they appreciate the fact that people two individuals with very different political points of view decided to hammer it out, you know?
But at some point, we need to discuss Stevie Ray Vaughan, because we do have a mutual interest in the man.
Doctor, we'll do I have a comic book podcast as well, and that'll be a good avenue for us to come on to, because I'll do Batman, Star Wars, Spider-Man. I'll do all sorts of things on that. We'll do a Stevie Ray Vaughan, we'll do a blues podcast, and we'll put a lot of attention on the great Stevie Ray Vaughan. All right, Doctor, you have any last words you just want to say to just the audience that are listening?
I just want to tell your audience that if you can just keep the personal stuff out of it, and you can talk about politics and policies, but when you start demonizing the person you're talking to, there's no way out. And that goes for on both sides, your audience, and if I had an audience, it would be my side as well. You can't demonize the person for his beliefs. That's all I wanted to say, and I really appreciate the opportunity to come on here. Other than that,
hey, Doctor, here to that, and just everybody that's listening, please know that we are on Stitcher, Google Play, iTunes, YouTube. Go to our YouTube channel, subscribe to that, and we hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll do more things like this in the future. And all I have to say is bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of our Left Shoe Politics podcast. You can find us on Twitter at Left Shoe Politics. Follow the Facebook page at facebook.com/Left Shoe Politics and the LSP website, leftshoepolitics.com. Search for our channel on YouTube, Stitcher, and Google Play.